Help me to reach 2,000 subscribers. The principal's affair. The sound of chalk cracking against the classroom floor shouldn't have frozen me. But it did. It was the same sound I remembered from years ago, when I first met Daniel in this very room, sunlight pooling through the windows as he nervously wrote his name on the board. He'd been so passionate, so alive then, his voice trembling slightly as he taught literature to a bunch of restless seniors. Now I stood at the doorway of that same classroom, holding my breath, the smell of floor polish and stale air thickening around me. The fluorescent lights flickered above, and then I saw it. His jacket draped carelessly over the teacher's desk. And behind the locked door, muffled voices. I shouldn't have come. I wasn't supposed to be here at all. Daniel had told me he'd be working late again. Special meeting with the principal about the new curriculum. But something in his tone yesterday had cracked the illusion of trust. Maybe it was how easily he'd avoided my eyes. Maybe it was how he'd said her name, Rebecca, with too much calm, too little hesitation. The principal. I'd met her twice. Polished, confident, the kind of woman who made everyone in the room feel smaller without saying a word. Her perfume lingered long after she left. I told myself I wasn't jealous. I was just curious, just concerned. But curiosity had a sound tonight. A low moan, soft and breathless, leaking through the thin classroom wall. My hands shook as I pressed against the door, my heart pounding so violently I thought it would betray me before he did. The sound came again. I wasn't imagining it. My knees weakened, and I pressed my back against the cold corridor wall. I wanted to scream, to burst through the door, to stop the world from spinning. But I stayed still, frozen in disbelief, my mind scrambling for excuses. Maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Maybe she was hurt. Maybe they were. A laugh cut through the silence, low and intimate. Daniel's laugh, and then her voice, whispering something I couldn't make out. That was enough. I turned the handle, clicked softly, and the door creaked open. The room smelled like her perfume. Rebecca was sitting on the edge of the desk, blouse half unbuttoned, her hand tangled in his hair. Daniel froze mid-motion, eyes wide, his expression morphing from pleasure to terror in a heartbeat. For a second, no one breathed. I stepped inside, every nerve screaming. The air buzzed with shame and disbelief. My vision blurred, but I could still see them. Two people I once respected, caught in a lie so raw it made my stomach twist. "Claire," Daniel stammered, pulling away from her. "This isn't. Don't," I whispered, my voice brittle. "Please don't insult me with that sentence." Rebecca straightened, her face calm, almost composed. "Claire, this isn't how it looks." I laughed, loud, sharp, broken. "You're half undressed on his desk, Rebecca. How exactly does it look?" Daniel reached for me and I flinched. The movement felt automatic, rehearsed even, like he'd already prepared for this confrontation. "How long?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "Claire, How long?" He swallowed hard, glancing down. "A few months." The floor seemed to tilt. "A few months," I repeated, numb. "And every night you came home reeking of lies, telling me you were exhausted from work." He stepped closer, his face crumpled with guilt. "I never meant for this to happen. I was lost, I cut him off. "You were bored, Daniel. Not lost. There's a difference." Rebecca crossed her arms, trying to regain control. "This is between you and your husband. I think you should." I turned to her, eyes burning. "No, you don't get to step out of this now. You destroyed my marriage in the same room where we first fell in love. You used your authority, your charm, whatever it took, to make him forget the vows he made to me." Her mouth tightened, but she didn't respond. Daniel whispered, "Claire, please, let's go home and talk." "Home?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "That's funny, because I don't think we have one anymore." The silence stretched. The clock ticked, slow and cruel. I picked up his jacket from the desk, folded it neatly, and placed it on a chair. My hands moved mechanically, though my chest felt like it was caving in. "I came here tonight to surprise you," I said softly. "I brought dinner." Your favorite. I thought we could eat together, maybe laugh like we used to. But now I realize you've already had your meal. His eyes filled with tears, but I didn't look away. I wanted him to see what he'd done, how something beautiful had turned rotten right in front of us. When I finally left the room, I didn't slam the door. I just walked down the corridor, each step echoing through the empty halls like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. Outside, the rain had started. The campus lights glowed against the wet pavement. I stood there, soaked, watching the reflection of that cursed building ripple on the ground. Part of me wanted to go back to demand more answers. Another part, the quieter, wiser part, knew there was nothing left to say. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, the school board called. They'd received an anonymous email containing pictures, Daniel and Rebecca, together, in that classroom. I hadn't sent them. I didn't even know they existed. When I asked Daniel about it, his face went pale. She told me she deleted everything, he whispered. Everything? I asked. He nodded weakly. That's when I realized Rebecca had been recording their encounters all along. Maybe for leverage, maybe for revenge. Whatever the reason, her downfall came fast. She resigned under pressure. Daniel was suspended indefinitely. And me? I was left with silence. With memories of a man who once recited poetry to me under those same classroom lights. Some nights, I drive past the school just to see if the windows are still lit. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're dark. But every time, I imagine them there. His guilt, her ambition, and my heartbreak, still lingering like ghosts trapped between chalk lines and broken promises. I'm learning to breathe again, slowly, to accept that love isn't always sacred, that sometimes betrayal is the only truth left standing. The last thing Daniel ever said to me before I left him was, "I never wanted to hurt you," and I told him, "That's the worst part. You hurt me without even meaning to." That night, I packed my bags, walked into the rain, and never looked back. Because some classrooms don't teach lessons, they bury them. And I'd learned mine too late.